Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're happy to see you on this balmy Thursday night. We hope you got outside and got some sun today. Tonight, we are going to feature Ben Glass and Jonathan Loney, who were a vital part of our clinic on Saturday. Now, if you were at the clinic, stick around because they're going to get into a little bit more. They were time constrained on Saturday, and we're going to have some good discussion tonight. If you want to ask a question, go down to the reactions on your screen and raise your hand, and we'll try to figure out how to get to you. There was something else I was supposed to say. Ben, what is it?
I think that's good. The other thing is that, I think a vital part of these Thursday night meetings has been the Q&A. And, Jonathan and I aren't the last word on the topic, right? And so it's always great. What we're trying to do is to get the referee team, the association team, as much on the same page as we can. So the Q&A is important. So play with us.
Okay, well, with that said, and greetings from CSOA, I give you Ben Glass and Jonathan Loney.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for getting on the call tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about, dealing with people who are angry at you, mainly coaches. For those of you who don't know me, I've been refereeing with CSOA about 4 or 5 years. I first picked up the whistle about 48 years ago. So I've got a lot of experience in doing games. I've got 9 kids, so I have a lot of experience in dealing with people who want to tell you no or, disagree with you. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is really the high school game and managing the different personalities on the field. So let me talk, first of all, to those of you who may be new to CSOA or new to high school soccer, and we know we have a lot of new members. First, thank you for being here. There's a crucial need in the country and in the area for referees who are interested in the high school game. But I want to tell you, you're in a really neat place. High school is different. It is different from club soccer. It's different, obviously, from pro and from collegiate soccer. And while we have in the group a FIFA referee, a FIFA assistant referee, a national referee, many experienced collegiate referees who are either still actively refereeing at the collegiate level or who have refereed at the collegiate level. For most of us, and I've never refereed at the collegiate level, but for most of us, this is like the highest part of the game that we'll do. And I'll tell you that if you're coming from the youth soccer world, the high school game is just different because we have stadium, we have national anthem, we have announcers, we have a bit of formality, and it is a really, really cool experience. The other thing that you'll see if you're new as you start to work with the men and women of this association is that by and large, they take the art and science of refereeing very seriously, and they take their jobs very seriously. So it's a great environment to be in, and we welcome you. And we want to make this experience as comfortable and good as it is, because Jonathan and I and many folks on the call, we love that game. We love the high school game, the whole deal. So this little project started a couple of months ago with an idea from the board is how could we help some of our referees who are perhaps less experienced at the high school game to learn how to deal effectively with people who are mad at you, right? Mainly coaches, in some cases players, but mainly coaches. And so in discussing the topic, we thought, well, okay, but this isn't just a new referee or a new to the high school game topic. This is a good topic for everybody, because the more that we can get the members of the association on the same page, how will we deal with sportsmanship in these games, the more we can be on the same page, the better the experience is going to be for the athlete, for the coach, for the school administrators, and most importantly, I think for us, because when we go out there, we want to enjoy the game. We want to get a good workout. For me, it's a mental and psychological challenge, which I really like doing. And we want to walk away from a game on a particular night having had fun, not having it been miserable. And so that's where we started. So then we started to think, well, okay, high school is not senior amateur soccer. It's not U8. It's not college. It's not MLS. It's its own thing. So where do we look, first of all, for the standard for sportsmanship in the game? We start with this. These games are all under the National Federation of High School rules, which you all have hopefully looked at the rule book and taken the test. And in Virginia, these games are under the auspices of the Virginia High School League. And there's a woman there. Her name is Kelly Haney. And Kelly, her job at VHSL is to liaison with the sports officials across a broad variety of sports throughout Virginia. And when you go to watch the mandatory training video from the Virginia High School League, you have to do that to be a referee here. That's Kelly on the video. And 2 years ago, in February of 2019, which was the last time CSOA had before this past weekend, last time we had a live preseason meeting, Kelly was there, and she made it very clear. She said, the standard for sportsmanship in high school in Virginia is excellence, She said that sportsmanship is very, very important to the Virginia High School League, right? And so we serve, I think, Jonathan believes, the VHSL. I mean, if there's any question about how much dissent, how much crap do you take, we look first to what would Kelly Haney say, and the standard is excellence. Below Kelly, we serve the principals at these schools. And every single principal, if you ask them, what do you expect of your players and your coaches and your spectators at a game, they'll tell you exactly what Kelly said, which we expect excellent sportsmanship. And every school administrator I've ever run into in any games or in my life out in the community, they will back that up. Yes, we serve the players and the coaches, absolutely. And they're the ones we serve most closely physically. But if there's any dispute as to what the standard is or what is acceptable behavior on a soccer field or any other sport in the high school league, that standard is excellence. And we look to the VHSL. And, I joke sometimes we should wear a little wristband that says, what would Kelly Haney say when something is blowing up in a game? So that's the standard. Referees tend to make three mistakes in dealing with poor sportsmanship by coaches. Dissent is mainly what we're talking about here tonight. The first is we fail to recognize dissent. We spend a lot of time as referees being tested on and reviewing how do we recognize fouls. Mark did a program a couple of weeks ago. How do we recognize and deal with injuries? We do mechanics. How do we manage walls? Mark did a program on that. How do we manage the clock? Did a program on that. We don't do a whole lot of this training, which is how do we recognize and then manage dissent? And dissent is, right, words or action that are provocative, public, or personal. Actions and words that are designed to lower your stature as a match official in front of the players and in front of the spectators. So we as a sports official, as a referee team, we need to be cognizant of what is going on the field. It's not just what is being said to the referee, right? It's what is happening on the sideline, what is being said to the assistant referees. It is not the assistant referee's job to take crap from a coach. We watch games on TV and we see coaches going at the fourth official, right? Okay, again, that's a different game, professional game, collegiate game. If that's the standard they accept and you want to referee in that world, fine, good for you, okay? But that's not the high school game. So that referee has to be aware of what actions and words are being used in the game by a coach. And I think the first mistake we make is really not listening and not being kind of observant to the whole circumstance. The second mistake that referees tend to make is we then, having recognized dissent and unsporting behavior, we don't deal with it. Why don't we deal with it? Because it's hard, right? Somebody is yelling at you. It is sometimes easier to let that event pass and hope it goes away than to have a confrontation. And Jonathan, retired Marine, law enforcement officer, has got some just great part, and part of what he's going to lead with here in a few minutes is he's got some great tactics, ideas, words in dealing with, okay, we are going to confront the dissent, and now how do we do that? But so we don't recognize it, we don't deal with it because it's uncomfortable. And what happens when we don't deal with it in a game? A couple of things. Number one, game's going on, and the coach is now coming at you or coming at one of your match officials with conduct which is, personal, provocative, or public, right? And you don't either recognize it or deal with it. What happens? Now, coach says, all right, that's good. I can go up to this standard and no one is going to say anything. And now he's into the unsporting behavior standard, right? So what's the next thing the coach is going to do, right? He's going to push a little higher. He's going to push a little higher. And when we indicate by our non-reaction to that either we don't recognize it or we're too weak to deal with it, we're saying a couple of things. Number one, we're saying to the coach that is behaving, your good conduct doesn't matter. All that stuff we talked about, and by the way, Dave Morrison gave a great talk about the referee and captain and coach pregame on Saturday, and hopefully we have a recording of that someplace. A great talk on that. But when we either don't recognize or don't deal with it, we're saying to the coach who's behaving, all that stuff we talked about before we tossed the coin, that's BS. We don't really mean it. We don't really mean that the playing field is an extension of the classroom. We just have to say that because it's in our script, but we don't really mean it. And that's bad for the game. The other thing that happens is you've got your teenage player, boy or girl. Who do they take their lead from? They take their lead from the adult authority in the game, right? The coach. And so as the coach is escalating and we're not dealing with it, that player gives himself or herself permission. Now I can get on it too. So how many of you have been at a youth game, not a high school game, but a youth game where the parents are right on the sideline, and you've watched perfectly sane and rational teenagers, I've watched this person, and I'm sure everyone has, get riled up either by their coach who keeps escalating or the parents who are right on the sideline. And in the youth game, when you have parents right on the sideline who are escalating it and you're not doing anything about it, the player, the perfectly rational, good teenager, like I like this athlete. I find, knock on wood, I don't have a lot of problems with this stuff in my games, right? I love that teenage high school athlete. But once the adults in the game are going at the referee and that's unchecked, the teenager thinks, I can do this too. Like, how could they get mad at me if I start to go off on the referee because they're doing it? And I think that's now our fault, really, our responsibility, because we haven't dealt with it. The other thing that happens when you don't deal with it, when dissent is present and you don't deal with it, is you're saying, I'm not a very good referee because I can recognize foul, I can manage free kicks, I can manage the clock, but I'm not good at recognizing an essential element of the game, which is dissent. All right, so the third mistake that referees make is now we recognize it, we choose to deal with it, and many times our instinct, because we're not trained on this, like there's not a lot of training like what you're having here tonight, our instinct is to deal with it with a position of power. I have a badge, I have a yellow card, I have a red card. I am the referee. You are the coach. You need to shut up. I'm going to caution you. And when you're dealing, when someone is mad at you, and Jonathan will go into this a little deeper here in a minute, when someone's mad at you, their brain is starting to go on fire. and their irrational primitive brain is starting to take over from their rational thinking brain. Because every coach, if you're having coffee with them, they'll tell you, like, yeah, the standard excellent sportsmanship, and that's what I think. I think it's really funny. I see these coaches on social media going, yeah, we should have excellent sportsmanship, but I've watched them, right, referee them and watch them coach. Like, no, they're lying. But when that brain starts to get on fire, and we respond to that brain in a power versus power way, all we are doing is escalating the conversation. Because when you're mad and I come back to you with a show of force, I have a badge, I have a card, you're wrong, or worse, I start having a conversation, a yelling conversation with you from 40 yards. Coach, shut up. Coach, if I hear one more word out of your mouth, I'm going to give you a yellow card, right? It's rare that any human being, and particularly coaches, are going to respond to that type of approach and go, oh, I get it. Like, I'm going to sit down and be good. It's the same thing, it's the same thing actually with players as well. Like, so many of us are really good, I think, at managing this teenage brain by drive-bys, by running with them, by having that quiet word that doesn't show them up, right? Doesn't put power against power, because whatever I just said about the coach's brain being on fire, the teenage brain can hit that spot quicker because their brain is not mature, right? The brain doesn't mature until about age 25 for this. So I'm going to pass this to Jonathan to start a conversation now about, and again, retired Marine, great book recommendations, but lived his life in law enforcement where, there's a lot of confrontation opportunities there, and a lot of ways, as he'll tell you, that can go wrong in a big, big way. And then we'll come back. We got a little bit more, and we'll have some discussion about this.
Thank you, Ben. All right, I appreciate the introduction, and thank you all, CSOA, for allowing us to come back and give the opportunity to give this very critical training. So as Ben mentioned, I kind of segue into a couple of elements that he mentioned that kind of put ourselves in a position of understanding where we see ourselves as officials, as authority figures, authoritative over the game, and then where we position ourselves into getting the most out of the conduct between the coaches and the players. So if you recall a couple of minutes ago, Ben mentioned there, the hierarchy that we have from National Federation High School Sports down to VHSL. And then, of course, we have our mandates that we are expected to enforce and comply with in terms of how we deal with managing dissent, how we deal with how professional interactions with players and particularly with coaches. So at the training on Saturday, I mentioned an acronym that I think is applicable to use. And for those of us that remember the days of GPS, it's GPS: game, partners, and self. And so referring back to what Ben had mentioned, where we put ourselves, let's start with the top of that first, the game. The game is the most important aspect of why we are officials. It's why the players are there. It's why the coaches are there. It's why the sport exists. So we have this overarching necessity that we need to honor the game. Now, as Ben mentioned, if there are various levels of the game that exist between, federation and high school is its own entity, recreational, and some that have absolutely, no authority by which they operate. But still, the game of soccer is something to be revered in terms of we need to honor the way that we manage the game. We enforce the rules, absolutely. Just like in law enforcement, we have rules to enforce. We have laws and interpretations that come along with it. But in the end, the rules and the laws support keeping society safe and operable and fun to exist in. And it's the same way with the game. We officiate the game in order to make sure the game is safe, fun, and obviously continues to exist. So we have overall the game. Next, underneath there, we have our partners. Partners meaning not only just our partners on our crew, whether you're an AR2 or whether you're the referee, the partnerships exist across the board. The partnerships are referee to organization, referee to fellow crew members, referees to player, and referee to coaches. The partnerships, those lines of influence that a referee has, that each referee, not by position referee, AR1, AR2, but each official has to be in consonance with what kind of partnerships do you expect to develop and expect to cultivate in order to make the game what it needs to be. So we have the overarching game, we have partnerships that need to be created, which means it involves interaction. Just having the badge, as Ben mentioned, and going out, you got your yellow card and your red card and your whistle, and your Superman or Superwoman go onto the field and everybody pays attention to you and the game goes well, will not go over too well in the end, particularly when you're going to different levels of competition deeper into the season. And we all know that soccer is obviously a very emotional sport. That being said, the partnerships that you develop and cultivate from beginning to end and every detail that goes in the middle all has to do with how we manage dissent. So if it's just X's and O's, A's and B's, black and white, soccer players go out, they kick the ball and there's no dissent, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. However, that does not exist in the real world. And then, so we need to address the issue of dissent. And then last on the list is self. Where do we see ourselves as officials? Do you see yourself as that authority figure, be all, say all, do as I say, not as I do? Nope, you're going to do it anyways. Or are you the manager that's out there and the leader of the game? You are the latter. We are the latter. We are not the overarching authority that exists with the NFHS rules. They are the overarching authority. Then we have the VHSL. They are the overarching authority. We have CSOA. They are the overarching authority. And then we have who comes out to see the game, the spectators, are the coaches and the players and the teams. They are kind of really the overarching authority. We're there to just balance and make sure that the rules are played fairly. See ourselves in that light to be the arbiters of the game and the protectors of the game, to the ones to develop and to cultivate partnerships. And least in that number is self. So once we remove self out of the equation, then we have just a job that we have to do. And this is where one aspect of that is managed dissent. So Ben mentioned, you have these trigger points of, flash to bang, 0 to 60. Everybody's fine. Warm-ups are going good. Hey, ref, how you doing? Good to see you today. Hey, coach, how you doing? Good to see you today. Opening kickoff whistle, and then people just go haywire. Happens in probably almost every game. And if it hasn't happened to you, good. This is the time to prepare yourself for when it does happen. So before that, between that 0 to 60, everybody's good. Everybody loses their mind when you blow the whistle on a foul call. Everything in the middle there is the gray space that we want to operate in here. And that's called managing dissent. Dissent has this crescendo level. It's kind of an ebb and flow. Everybody's good. The players are good. Everybody wants to just kind of get started. First 5 or 10 minutes of a match, maybe kind of boiled up in there. But after a while, players get tired. Techniques start failing. Plays start failing. Coach doesn't like your positioning. Maybe you have some things going on. If you didn't remove self out of the upper echelons of games and developing our partnerships, and friction will take place. So the gray space is dissent. Now, how do we see ourselves there? Couple of principles. Number one, the only way to avoid criticism is to operate within a silo or in something that resembles break glass in the event of war. If you're not in those two situations, then you are the one, as we all are, that needs to understand and inspect and embrace the fact that you are going to be criticized. Now, as Ben mentioned in one of his PPPs, do you take it personal? Could you? Yes. Does it get personal? Okay. That goes to the very extent of now we have to deal with a situation. If it falls short of that, there is the gray space of dissent. So understanding dissent, first of all, comes with we all make mistakes. We all get criticized. don't take the criticism personally unless it just crosses that line. But if it doesn't, we're going to take criticism. If you got into refereeing, or if you're existing in refereeing to not take criticism, you're probably in the wrong uniform. Now, do we want you to quit? No. Do we want you to not understand the training and to not try to learn different techniques about managing dissent? Absolutely. We want you to stay here, because it all, in the end, it makes us better people. Game, partnership, self. Better people in managing dissent, which means managing emotions. So first and foremost, understand and embrace the criticism. Number 2, don't resist the opposition. Move with it and redirect the energy into a constructive manner. Don't resist the opposition. Move with it and redirect the energy into a constructive opportunity. So what is that saying? The negative friction of just being an authoritative figure, we say this in law enforcement all the time. Being in law enforcement, you are the person that everyone loves to hate, bar none. Unless you're some superstar referee and everybody's going after you to get your, autograph afterwards, you're probably that person just as well as soon as you walk onto the pitch and you're in uniform. You're the person that everyone loves to hate. Regardless of the fact that at the end of the game, 50% of the people there will like you, until you get to that point, you need to find out opportunities to take the negative energy and the opposition that will come and redirect it positively. So let's go back and apply this now to partnerships. This is where you start. As Ben mentioned, Dave Morrison taught a good pregame class on Saturday, and it dealt with how do you prepare yourself and your partners for this situation. We rarely include these kind of topics in there, except to say, well, if you had it, you had it with a coach. If the era one had it with the coach, then call me over. I'll just give the yellow card. But until then, find the opportunities to manage the partnerships. And that is talking about opposition. So I'm going to take this over back to Ben in a second here, but the 2 key principles. Number 1, you will get criticized. We all get criticized. Embrace the criticism. Number 2, don't avoid the opposition. The opposition will come. Let's just learn some techniques and some methods by which we take that opposition and redirect it back to something that's a little bit more positive. And then we also talked again, the GPS, game, partnership, self. And this is where the initial point of this all starts at. Removing self from the equation and honoring what the authorities and the game that we have to enforce, where we see ourselves in terms of what we offer to the game from the beginning of your jurisdiction on arrival until the very end, when you're expected to walk away and say, and hope that most of the people there say, you know what, those officials called a fair game. And they redirected and got everybody from baseline here down to here in a very emotional sport. Ben, back over to you.
So I think a lot of this begins with your attitude and what you expect you get. So if you go into the high school game expecting that it's going to be a real clown show and it's going to be, a disaster, then that's more than likely the result that you will get. If you go into the high school game, even a rivalry game, and I'll talk about a couple here in a minute, with the expectation that this is going to be fun for me. So I do put self, in part of my instruction, my pregame to my referee team is, we're here to have fun first for ourselves and to enjoy the game. All right. So that's why we do the training, physical, mental, and stuff like this. The second thing is, it's important to remember is through my family experience, and just real quick for those who don't know, we've got 9 kids, 4 adopted from China, lived in some pretty harsh orphanages. We've done a lot of learning. My wife and I have done a lot of learning, brain science, and how to respond to the brain that's on fire. And the number one thing that someone who is angry at you wants to know is that their voice has been heard, not necessarily agreed with. And there's some great examples, Jonathan, in the Verbal Judo book, right, of people like really going off on law enforcement officers. And there's a chapter where the law enforcement like, just take it. Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. I still need to see your license so we can have a chat, right? A really great chapter. So some words that will help, because Jonathan talks about like deflecting wave, all this energy coming at you, right? Which we can respond with a sonic bomb. We have a sonic bomb to send back, but that rarely ends well. So language you can use, things like, I hear you, I understand, I get it. Because sometimes we're wrong, we know we're wrong, we know we blew it, and life just has to move on. Like, we're not doing makeup calls for that. The coach can be legitimately angry if our fitness isn't good, if our positioning isn't good. And yes, we do miss calls. So words like, I hear you, is not what they're expecting. They're expecting a fight. Some of them are wanting a fight. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I did it's a rivalry game, and we call these coaches with reputation. So we don't name names. An incident happened right in front of the bench of a coach with a reputation. I called it against his team. He and his staff erupted. Like, I knew something was there. But I couldn't do, one angle, one view, I'd made my call. And he's going kind of crazy. And first thing I did is I did not have a public 40-yard conversation, shut up, sit down, I'm not listening to this, is I walked over to him. So that's a technique here, is when you have decided to talk to a coach, it's a walk towards the bench. It's a conversation in your own mind. I'm going to lower my heart rate. I'm going to lower my breathing rate. What am I going to say? What can I say? My words to him were, I hear you. I know you disagree, but this is a high school game, and so we can't have it this way. And I said, look, send me the video after the game. I'll be happy to look at it. Coach with a reputation, his entire coaching staff was really on fire, but they all heard that conversation, and I said it in exactly the tone I just said it here. No problem the rest of the game. I got the video later. He was more right than I was. He had a better angle, was right in front of his bench. Okay. But because I recognized, yeah, okay, there's maybe something I missed here, reminded him of this is high school and it's different. So you can't just keep going at it. And I was empathetic. I said, look, I'll look at it later. All right. Didn't say I would agree, not agree, whatever. Right. That was good. And it was good for the rest of the game. I think other techniques like the whole body language, and John, we can talk about this. I know you've got some points here too, but there's a difference between you shut up, you sit down, and kind of going with the open palm. I'm a smile guy. I'm like, hey, hey, it's a big field. Hey, okay, I'll get it next time. Hey, I hear you. Hey, it wasn't that bad a tackle. And that kind of, for me, that shrug, that open hand, that kind of, we're all in this game together to promote a safe environment, a competitive environment for these athletes. That, for me, everyone has their own personality, but that goes a long way towards reducing the temperature of the game. And the last thing I'll say on this is, I think, and particularly for those of you who are new to the high school game, is I think that the pregame between the referee team is vital, right? You don't want to be sitting in an aircraft and overhear the pilot say to the co-pilot, screw the checklist, just don't screw it up this time. Like you're running off of that airplane, right? We need to go down a checklist. If you're an AR in a game and the referee says, just normal stuff, don't screw it up. No, that's not professionalism. One of the points of emphasis this year, sportsmanship is a point of emphasis. You know what else is a point of emphasis for the first time? Referee professionalism. Professional referees spend time in a pregame. Even if I work with Jonathan a bunch, I actually have a written checklist on one of my extra yellow cards that I carry with me in the game. It reminds me of the points of discussions I want to have. Real quick story. Last year, Eric Highsmith and I are online for Nick Rod. So Nick Rod is one of our now is a national referee. It is a local derby. It is one of the teams has a coach with a reputation. Now we went into the game with the attitude of this is going to be fun for us. We love to be here. It was a beautiful night. We knew it was going to be a fun game too, and we knew that we were going to have to work hard. But Eric and I spent a lot of time in the pregame discussing with Nick Rod and trying to understand Nick Rod's level of tolerance? What are you willing to accept, Nikran? How do you want us to communicate to you? How much of the coach do you want? And I was the official next to the coach of the reputation. How much do you want me to take or deal with or that? Because we needed to be on the same team. Now, again, that's not like going in bad attitude. This is going to be a clown show, right? That's like referees who are going to be prepared. 40% of that pregame that night was us figuring out how to communicate with each other about sportsmanship with this coach. You know what happened during the game, Jonathan?
What happened?
Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. I mean, the coach was an angel, in part because Nikrod has a reputation. He's a good referee. I think the coach knew they had a very experienced crew on the field that they could trust to, to get the game played safely, but not anything that got close to Dissent. So I said that was the last thing. I think the last thing is we are humble servants. We are a part of the game, for sure. It is easy for us when we are being attacked, because we are human beings. It's easy for our ego to want to respond. That's the primal brain. That's the reptilian part of your brain that just says, fight, right? And we need to be the sane ones in the game. So when you're having discussions with coaches or players, it should be in your head, I'm being audio recorded. Pretend like there's a mic, you're mic'd up. A lot of us are now mic'd up with each other. You're always being video recorded. Every game is recorded on video, and spectators have cameras, right? So we need to be the consummate professionals whose mindset is, as Johnson said, there are going to be hot points in the game. Our job is to try to lower that temperature. If someone does go over the line, I mean, again, the training from the United States Soccer Federation, right? Ask, tell, dismiss is great. And so my instruction to my match officials before the game is this. My friends, we're here to enjoy the game. And when I get to the dissent part of my checklist, I have a zero tolerance for dissent, zero. And I'll say to them, I'm not an asshole about it, but I have zero tolerance. So when it happens, I will deal with it. And that dealing is, coach, I hear you. You're the coach, I'm the referee. It's not really your role. And I'll say it just this way. It's not your role today. And 80% of the time, coach, yes, sits down, no more problem. Coach wants to keep, he's a last word coach, right? Got to get the last word in. If I can't get him to reach agreement on that's not your role tonight, then the promise is, coach, okay, if I have to come back, it'll be to caution you, right? So that's a promise. It's not made to embarrass, public, loud, from the middle of the field. It's a discussion just like we're having here. Jonathan, if I have to come back over here, I'll have to, I'll have no choice. I'll have to caution you. And then if it happens again, then I have to carry through with that, or else I have lost my authority on the field. So, John, you got any other that one-on-one verbal technique? Because you had a great story you told me at the beginning of the training Saturday.
Sure will.
So, take some questions. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ben. So, as Ben mentioned, so the verbal judo, if we didn't already mention it, it's verbal judo, the gentle art of persuasion. That is the name of the book. You can go and download it, ebooks. You can download it on a book on a tape as well and listen to it, whichever way. But it's verbal judo, the gentle art of persuasion. And judo is Japanese, which means gentle way. So the premise, going back to, what Ben was referring to, which is perfect in setting the tone for how we now have the discussion and the dialogue with coaches, is we treat, in law enforcement, at least in the book, it says, we treat people like ladies and gentlemen, not because they are, but we are. So let's take this in the context of sports.
Yeah.
We treat coaches and players like ladies and gentlemen, because they are, and we are. Everyone is to be regarded as a professional. Is it a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old player, student, athlete? Yes. Will a student athlete at those ages respond negatively to authority if it's presented in the wrong way? Well, those of us that have kids know that, yeah, probably so. Those of us that have been in high school sports, yes, probably so. So find another gentle way to, again, redirect the opposition into something that's more positive. So let's start from there. So it's talking about sports. The book also mentions that communication and dialogue is a non-contact sport. Perhaps. Gamesmanship happens, absolutely, and how a coach, as Ben mentioned, coach wants to elevate it and escalate it. Sometimes, and when we get in our heads and not out of self, we want to elevate it and escalate it until there's some kind of, head battling going on, and then that leads to absolutely nothing. So then from that point, if that's the case and communication and dialogue is a non-contact sport, then let's practice to respond, not react. So there's 11 maybe-ish things that like to go through real fast. And if you're getting them in your chat rooms, if you are able to, or if you want to chime in here and give us some feedback, there's about 10 or 11 different scenarios, things that will probably be defined as a referee reaction, maybe a misreaction, and we want to change those into responses. This is by all means not an end all be all, but it's a couple things that we'll go through. So number one, coach says something or a player says something that just triggers you. Your reaction is, hey, come here. What is that saying? What is that indicating? What kind of a message is that sending? Or if anyone that wants to jump on and let us know what that is probably sending, or put it in the chat room. Hey, player 29, come here. Hey, coach, come here. What is that saying?
Well, it's certainly not adult to adult.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's certainly not adult to adult. It's parent to child.
Absolutely. Good.
Right.
Anyone else? That's a good
Because
point.
I said so.
Daniel, I think you had your hand up. Daniel Brazen, do you have your hand up? Dina says he knows how to push your buttons. Absolutely. Hey, come here. If a police officer, let's put this back in law enforcement terms. If a police officer comes up to you just at random and says, hey, come here, what are you thinking? Run away, run the other way, and run real fast. Absolutely. It's saying go someplace because you did something wrong. You did something wrong. Maybe a better way of saying it is, hey, can I chat with you for a second?
That's a great, that is a great line. And, another thing that, many of us do is finding those players on the team, on the field who are responsible. Is sometimes the captain, often the captain, but, sometimes the coach puts the captain armband on the kid who's a jerk just because they think the armband is going to protect them from us, right? But enlisting the help of the responsible players on the team to help you have that conversation. Again, these high school athletes, I find them fun. By and large, they don't go into the field wanting to be disrespectful. And I think that they get it. They get triggered by the adults, whether it's the referee sometimes, whether it's their coach or mom or dad is screaming at the referee. That really has an effect on their brain. It really can unleash it.
Daniel had a good point in there. He said that it's a challenge to the person. And that is one of the least things that we want to do. Again, if we go back to our axioms, game, partner, self, and you remove yourself from the situation, well, if your authority does get challenged, then we know that leads to a reaction, not a response. So why would we do that to a player? Why would we do that to a coach? Let's redirect that. Hey, can I chat with you for a second? Again, we want to de-escalate the emotions in the situation and then redirect the opposition into something that's a little bit more positive. Hey, instead of, hey, come here, you better not foul like that again. Hey, number 11, listen, that trip that you tried to make over there, that's a little bit on the careless side. I almost got you for it. Can you just be a little bit more careful the next time? I see Chuck's hand up.
Yeah, Jonathan, I just want to point out, it depends on what is causing you concern. Because if what we're trying to do is something that we want to make sure everybody knows that's not acceptable.
Sure.
What we don't want to do, as you said, is react. But there may be a time that we do want to use the, hey, we, don't jump to it as your first thing in most situations. But there is a time and a place for it.
Absolutely. Ben, you had a couple examples on Saturday that you talked about the physiological responses in one of the books that you were reading that kind of tells us and maybe can inform us about what the body is thinking and is going through whenever we're in those challenging situations.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier here, but that part of your brain that was designed to protect you from the saber-toothed tiger and get you to fight or flee or freeze, all of which had a chance to protect you. That part of the brain just gets more power, and the rational brain sweeps away as you get escalated. It's the same thing if in the middle of the night, all of a sudden there was gunfire outside of your house, like your brain is going to protect you. You're up, your heart rate is going, your breathing rate is up. It's the same thing that happens in a game. As Jonathan said, players get tired, the score changes, the coach's ego, because they may be losing or not doing as well, and the parents are mad at the coach. We just have to recognize that's human beingness, right? That is life. Personally, I just like to play the game of trying to be the one that can win that battle by not winning by force, but by sort of convincing them by my calmness on the field, most of the time, right? That this is what we're trying to achieve here. And I think the other thing that's important for this discussion is, look, if you go out there as a referee and think, I can take it, like they can yell at me, I'm cool with that. I mentioned Saturday, I talked to a VHSL lacrosse coach who says, his skill is absorbing F-bombs. I'm like, how could this even be VHSL? So like F-bombs from coaches, like your skill is absorbing that? No. Because if you tolerate that because you're tough, right? All it does is it sets up a harder game for me or that younger, inexperienced referee who has that coach the next week. So if we were on the same page as an association in terms of recognizing, dealing with appropriately, and knowing that we have the backing of the Virginia High School League and of course CSOA leadership, right? And again, all these games are videotaped, right? That's just going to make it better for everybody.
That's a good point, Ben. And you mentioned something else that actually brings up a axiom when we're talking, about, do we always have to have the last word? Sometimes when you lose, you win. And it's okay. Sometimes when you're in that dialogue, if we go back to the communication and dialogue is a non-contact sport, then let the coach win. Let the player win. It's a little bit of context, right? It's not abdicating your authority as a referee. We still have to enforce the rules. But and this is when we're talking managing gray space, managing interactions. Do you always have to have the last word? Do you have to say, yep, I got that, coach, finally? If you did, and you're thinking that in a conversation and going into it, then maybe we need to go back and reorient our GPS. Do we really need to have that last word? Sometimes when you lose, you win. David Morrison, I see you had your hand up.
So real quick, as you look at this, do you see a separation, and I'll just say church and state, between what a lot of the referees, and maybe we have some new high school referees coming on now, a separation between what you do on the weekend, rec, travel, soccer, and I know a lot of the gray-haired here are very thick-skinned and allow a lot to go and use a little bit of man and game management, versus what Kelly and what NFHS and VHSL is wanting us to do with dissent and unsporting-like behavior with the coaches and the players. Over.
So for me, no difference. I'm the same referee on Sunday as I am on Tuesday night. I think what you have in the VHSL and what we learned in our last live meeting in February 2019 is that you have ritualistic administrative backing. So when, as you know, our leadership knows, there's a red card, right? That goes up the food chain through school administration pretty fast. Principals want to know. The director of student activities, that Leo athletic directors, we called them when I was in school, they want to know. And so to me, it's even, you know, it's like knowing that is more helpful to me in a high school game, because I don't think anything happens in a youth game, or you never get the feedback as a referee of what happens. But I'm the same referee on Sunday as I am on Tuesday, you know. But you know, on Tuesday night we're on video.
Bob Heyer, I see that you have your hand up. Please, Sir Bob.
Yeah, you know, one of the things, it only took me about 10 years to develop a game face. It took me longer than that to develop this winter blonde hair. But you know, one of the things that is key to that is how you strut around the place. If you keep your hands down, you're not elbows across, hands on hips, but hands out. And as you pointed out, the palms up. It's non-confrontational without saying anything. And if somebody's yelling at me, my first thing is just relax. No, don't say anything to them. Just come to me. Come to me, and let's talk about it. You know, and as I say, it took about 10 years to develop that ability to do that. Use those non-confrontational appearances, if you will. And if I'm going to walk over to a coach, the other thing I will do is stand shoulder to shoulder and not front face to front face. Because one, you don't want to confront him. Two, you want to look out at the field, see what's happening behind your back. So, I mean, you know, those are things. The other one is don't wear sunglasses. I mean, a great part of what you want to get to somebody is coming through your eyes and your mouth. And every once in a while, like with the Afghan League, I just yell, no. And it's so loud that everybody turns around and says, oh, he's not happy, you know, and they relax.
So, yeah. So what Bob is talking about in large part is humility. I mean, to me, we are servants with the best seat in the house. We didn't have to buy the ticket to get in. We're getting exercise. Again, psychological challenge. That's, for me, that drives me to do this stuff. Like, it doesn't, you know, I don't worry about what the pay is or anything like that. We just really enjoy it. The other thing, though, Bob, that in part also comes from the confidence of, you know, having experience, of knowing the rules. Like, you know, we should never get caught not knowing what the rule is, what the restarts are, what the particular procedures are in high school soccer that are different from what we do on Saturday and Sunday. Yes, we can debate all the time the judgment calls, but we have to be 100% on getting our knowledge of the rules correct. Because when a coach springs doubt in your mind because he's saying something about a rule and you're not really sure, it's hard to be confident and humble with that coach. And now you've shown, like, you know, you really have no business being there if you don't if you don't know the rules of this particular game, and they're different, cold.
That's a good point. Matter of fact, so speaking of rules, you know, there's the book actually mentions one other, you know, do not say to officials and those that are in authority. Those are the rules. If you're asked about it, and your response is, those are the rules. Well, hey, ref, why? Because those are the rules. I just want to know, well, those are the rules. what is that saying? What is that communicating to the coach or to the players?
Because I said so.
As I said, so robot, there we go,
Yeah,
from Christian
exactly.
Zavala. Exactly. You're a robot. You're mechanical and you have no emotional ties to that game. As Ben said, you have we have some officials out there that are just there chasing the money and they don't care. It's just a blank wall, brick wall. I am the authority. That's it. But it's really that you're a robot. And
I think it's rare.
act
Yeah.
robot.
In this
Yeah.
association, I've not run into that person, I don't think.
Not at all. Not at all.
I know that they exist. Yeah.
And because we're having this training, we can make sure that that doesn't become the response. So the more appropriate reaction or response, the reaction would be, those are the rules. But the response is perhaps study and know what the rules are so you can interpret them. Ben just mentioned it.
I think, again, I've been doing this almost 50 years and I have a journal and I journal every single game that I do. And I write down who my partners were and I give a rating 1 to 10, not on how good I did, but how much I enjoyed it. So at the end of the season, I can go back and see whether I'm going to do this for another year. But there's almost, and I have this on my desk, right? 48 years in, and I'm still finding stuff that I didn't know, right? And it could be in the U.S. Soccer, the IFAB book, and oftentimes it's in here because they just do things differently. And so being self-reflective about your game, about your own performance, your own fitness, your own doubts. What did you learn from the game? What did you learn from the experience of any confrontations that you had? I think I found that practice to be valuable. I would say also, that through the season, I enjoy these Thursday night meetings a lot. I hope that somehow we can continue through the season. And I know that speaking for myself, and I'm sure for Jonathan, like we're available. If you have had an incident or just want to talk about maybe how something could have been handled differently about dealing with mad brains, right? I'm happy to chat with anybody, particularly the younger referees who we need. So 50,000 sports officials in NFHS gone in the last 3 years across all sports. This group needs to be recruiting, encouraging that young teenage ref, that high school player who's not going to play at college, right? Because this is the end of their career. We need to be the mentors and the same people to them so that they can help replenish our ranks, right? And that has nothing to do with dissent. That's just been on the philosophy of, life and being a person in the soccer world. And I think that we have a big role to play. And these kids are good kids. I mean, they just are. And you show that you have a little humility, that you understand what they're going, because they get fouled, they fall down, like that hurts. Like they get kicked, that hurts. And we have to recognize that and show that we recognize that. And yeah, every so often I'm like, dude, like, okay, what'd you see? Okay, well, I didn't see it that way. I might've got it wrong. And they will accept that. I mean, they're not all out there to get us.
Bob, I see Bob. Bob's hand is up, please.
Yeah, another nonverbal, which is really interesting in today's world, is if you go up and like this with a video and then make a run over to the AR in a controversial situation, say, hey guys, I'm checking. And I have come back from the AR and run up field after a controversial goal. And I had the coach one time, high school coach, say, thank you very much, ref. I appreciate that.
Exactly. I'll sometimes point to my earpiece and go, hey, we all three had it the same way. I mean, even if we haven't had, we all three, nobody saw a foul there.
Yeah.
I think we're, so Mark, I think we're running out just about an hour now.
Yes, sir. And Jonathan and Ben, my most sincere appreciation for coming on tonight, giving us the benefit of your experience and thought. I saw myself in some of your examples, and I'm going to have to go back and think about some of this stuff.
That's what we're here for. You know, if we can get people to think about this.
I sincerely appreciate it. And
Yep.
folks, this has been recorded. It will be up on the CSOA website sometime tomorrow. And it will also be posted to the CSOA Facebook page. Everybody, I appreciate your attention. And before we get out, if you log on with a nickname or some initials, could you go into the chat and let us know who you really are? And I heard someone else come on.
Mark, yeah. This is a Coyote question. What I'd like to do is, anybody got any questions about, not necessarily tonight, or about what's going on? Get a chance to ask a couple of questions. And if you don't want to stick around for this Q&A kind of thing, then I think that we're done for the night as far as that's concerned.
And we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Well done.
Jonathan. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah.
Great job. Great job. Loved it.
Fun.
The yin and yang.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
We'll appreciate it. We certainly, Mark, as we, mentioned on Saturday, and then again, through the emails earlier this week, available to continue this dialogue, going into the future. Love to get, Dave Morrison to come in as well and, expand on his pre-game meeting conversation and leaders discussion as well, because I think as we continue to weave the techniques in there and then get more, up and coming or even some experienced referees used to, how to confront this topic and deal with it and express it in a way that makes the game go smoother. I think that'll just, keep all of us in the loop to keep the instruction going.
Thank you, Jonathan. Be careful what you volunteer for. And I do wish that we could continue this throughout the season, and I just have to find a time and a venue that will accommodate as many as possible. As the season starts, we can get our brains together and discuss what has been successful and what perhaps needs some more emphasis. So
Mark, also for those that are on Facebook, my understanding, and I'm not, but those that are, my understanding is there's been some really good conversations that are happening on our Facebook. And for those that aren't on it, just for information purpose, it's a closed page. So what you say is amongst CSOA and CSOA only. So if you want to use that forum, that's another forum to jump into.
Makes sense.
And it's so great to see so many happy faces out there. Okay, Dick, did you want to go into another?
Yeah, just has anybody got any questions that's left online?
Dina, when are the earliest scrimmages? When does that actually start?
The first scrimmages are February 26th, and which is a Saturday, and then after that, Tuesday, March 1st, and they run until March 11th.
So we got another week, maybe two at the most, if we really want to try to kind of put a grind into preseason.
And I will say, if we're looking at continuing these sessions, Thursdays is probably not going to be the day. That tends to be our heaviest day for games.
Yeah.
All righty.
It's Friday morning between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning.
That's my gym time, Bob.
You'll be in charge, Bob.
As long as somebody brings the coffee.
Sunday night church, Sunday night church.
You have a question in the chat about two-man system.
I got game Sunday night.
Yeah, to answer the question about the dual officiating system, we will have a brief prior to the start of the season. It may not happen before the scrimmages start, but it'll definitely happen before the start of the season. And we'll talk about two-man.
Maybe that would be a good topic for next Thursday.
And I will say, as I'm assigning the scrimmages, I'm trying to make sure I always have a new CSOA member assigned with our more experienced members for precisely that reason.
Dina, real quick, when do you think those first assignments will go out?
The first ones have gone out, but I'm only on like Thursday of the first week, going back and filling them in. So I'm trying to get through everybody. I'm trying to spread the wealth. So if you haven't gotten an assignment yet, you will be.
Okay, thank you, Dina.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yep.
So I was unable to make it to the training on Saturday. Has the date for the makeup been announced yet?
No, Luke, it hasn't. And we'll get that out probably in a day or two for all of those people. You'll get, there'll be a group, only the group that have to make the makeup. We'll send the message to all of you and we'll have a session. Part of the issue, Luke, is getting, we intended to be able to use some of the presentations that were in the Saturday session. And unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we planned. So one of the reasons why Jonathan and Ben did their presentation tonight was in fact to give us a good recording of their words of wisdom, et cetera. So that'll happen shortly, Luke, and we'll get that word out for everybody that needs to go.
All right, thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome, sir. Yes, Joe. Okay.
I didn't have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't have a question. I'm good.
Oh, I just saw you light up. That's why I thought that.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I always walk up to the coach and tell him and stand next to him and ask him, would you like to tell me what your problems are? And rather than standing face to face, I prefer standing to side. And I want to get some feedback from Ben and Jonathan, if they favor that or not. It seemed to work for me. And sometimes I tell them I have a talking my good ear and I can hear your coach. That's what I do.
So that's actually one of the areas that is covered in the verbal judo book. Is it asks the question, what's your problem? This is official to coach or player. What's your problem, man? What's your problem, man? Now, if it's on the receiving end from official, from coach or player to official, what's your problem, man? Then maybe the reaction is, how can I help? What's the matter? Maybe there's something wrong. Obviously, I've offended you in some way, and for that, I apologize. What can I do to help this situation? Redirect the energy, because maybe there is a problem. It's just the way that it came across. Looks like it sounds like it's a lot more critical, but there is obviously some kind of an issue that's there. So obviously, again, game partner self, humble ourselves into, I don't have the last word, have to have the last word, and I don't need to react to this. Let me respond. Well, apparently there is a problem. Maybe I've offended you somehow and something that I did or didn't do. How can I help? And then just get the issue out. So it's redirecting from the terse way of being approached or from officials approaching a player into, there is something that is imbalancing the situation here. What can I do to rebalance it?
I've been saying it differently, but I bet you saying it in different words.
Exactly. It's taking the nasty words out of a conversation and replacing them with something that's a little bit more positive. I'm sure Ben probably has something to add to that one as well.
You know, Adam, at the end of the day, we each have our own styles. What Jonathan is talking about in psychology is called a pattern interrupt. So, you know, they say something, they expect you to say something back. And when you interrupt that pattern with something different, like I had a coach once and he kept going on and on. Something's going on between he and the AR, and I go over there and I didn't even understand what he's saying. I said, "What do you want me to do?" Which wasn't a question he was expecting, and he didn't have an answer at all. So I think I'm rarely doing a side by side unless I need to keep my eyes on something else that's actually going on in the field. Mine have been face to face. Again, I think I'm pretty good at the smile, the open hands. That has worked well for me. I do have a string of one-liners, you know, I've used, and it depends on the coach. Do I know the coach? You know, sometimes I'll drive by, hey, next, you know, if you think it's a foul, blow your whistle next time, right? And like their brain can't even comprehend that because they've never had someone tell them to blow the whistle next time. And then they kind of realize you got to know the coach, I think, in some cases. And you know, Adam, you've got a lot of experience. You've been successful, right, with your way of doing it. We're not trying to make you go 180 degrees and use particular words. We're just trying to give tips for you know, seeing their brain maybe through a different viewpoint. If there are referees who persistently struggle with control of dissent, then hopefully we've given some ideas as to how to make your life more fun. I mean, the whole deal is to make the referee's life fun, right? It's no fun if we're just in a 90-minute or 80-minute battle. We want to have fun.
Chuck has his hand up. Chuck,
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ben, I was somewhat surprised to hear you say to ask a question that you don't know the answer is going to come out as a lawyer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, use things that can diffuse the tension. Absolutely. And actually, I have heard, Adam, to bring your point up, and I think Bob Heyer said it earlier, being side by side is less confrontational than if you're face to face with a coach.
Yeah.
So, you know, use the different tools that we have. So, as Ben said, I mean, they don't pay us enough not to have fun.
Exactly. All right, well, that's been fun, guys.
all right.
Well,
Let's
thank you, everyone. With those kind words of wisdom, we shall bid you adieu and make an arrangement for next week.
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care, Ben. Take care, pals. Thanks again.
Folks.